Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unconventional GMs, the channel where we play with vim and vigour at pace. We try to get role-playing games done in 2 hours or less. I'm one of your hosts, Gaz, and as part of this, I also do What Would the Smart Party Do, the UK's premier RPG podcast. So do head over there, and you can check out an interview with the designers of the game that we're about to play tonight, which is Lovecraftesque. But I'm going to let our glorious guest, a guest GM. Can we call that in a GMless game? We'll find out later on. I'll let her introduce that. First of all, though, of course, I've got my regular co-host, Guy. How's it going, Guy?
It's going brilliantly. Yes, I'm Guy from this and also the Burn After Running blog, and very excited to play. I think this is our first GMless game on Unconventional GMs. Hopefully not the last. We'll see. But I'm going to hand over straight away to our guest facilitator. Is that the word? Becky. Becky, do you want to introduce yourself and get us going?
Oh, I would love to. So I'm Becky Annison. I'm one half of Black Armada Games, and this is our current main product that's out that we're going to be playing, which is Lovecraftesque 2nd edition, and we're going to be playing it on this very snazzy Roll20 tabletop because there are lots of cards involved, and we're all playing remotely. So I'm going to kick off by doing the admin and the explaining of the game and of the system. And I'm actually going to start with a little bit of a safety talk, because we love a safety talk. You may notice, the eagle-eyed amongst you, that there are 2 cards on the table. One is called Stop and one is called Erase. So if during the course of this game you need to pause for a break or something like that, then you say, I'd like to use the Stop card. And if you'd like to sort of stop the content and edit out something that has just happened and change it for comfort reasons or any reason really, then you can use the erase card. It's a little bit like the X card. I'd also like to kind of establish a bit of lines and veils before we start as well, if that's okay. I was going to propose that my lines are going to be sexual assault, real world bigotry, and checking my list here, torture. They shouldn't be relevant in this game anyway. But it is a horror game. It is a game based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, so I want to go a little bit carefully. Would either of you like to add anything to that list?
I'm happy with your list.
I'm happy with yours. I tend to get sort of violence against children behind a veil, if that's okay. And I'd also obviously just say we've got these there. If your viewers, of course, look after yourselves as well. Feel free to be aware of what we're doing in here.
Excellent. And I think violence against children under a veil could be very important because our main character, who we will be sharing the play of, is going to be a 12-year-old girl in this scenario. But before I get into more detail on that, let me give you a little bit of an overview about what this game is and how it works. So Lovecraftesque is a collaborative horror storytelling game where we are going to, together as a group, come up with the beats of that story, the beats of the horror mystery, and we're going to play it all the way out to the conclusion. We don't know right now what the horror is, but we will come to know by the end of the game. So there is going to be only one character in this game, the witness, because in a horror game you don't really have a protagonist. You have somebody who observes events rather than directs them, and that character is going to be shared, and every scene we're going to rotate that character, so we're all going to get a chance to play them several times over. There's 2 other roles in this game, and if you want to look up to the left, I think it's the left hand side of the Roll20 board, you will see that there's a card for each role telling you the rules of that role if you want to refer back to it. But just very briefly, obviously we've got the witness whose job is to be led around like a dancing monkey by the GM in the scenes that happen. There's going to be a narrator. That's going to be like a GM role. So you're going to basically GM an individual scene. And in that scene, your main job is obviously to play the world, make it feel real, and introduce a clue. And I'll talk about a bit more about that in a minute. And the third role is going to be the whisperer, and their job is to help the narrator add chilling detail. Maybe they'll play the odd NPC for flavor, and the GM or the narrator can say to that person, hey, can you answer this question to fill in a little bit of background for me? And the whisperer will respond and give them some really juicy, cool background and detail. And we're going to rotate all of those roles over the course of the game. So they're all shared. Now, let's talk about clues. Clues are really important in this game because that's how you build the mystery. The narrator's main job, apart from playing the world in every single scene, is to introduce a clue. Now, I have already dealt, I haven't seen what the clue cards are. I have dealt them using the shuffle function. But if you look at your little your icon on the Roll20 board, you should see just at the top of your icon a little card back with the number 3 on it. That's your hand. Your hand should contain a mixture of clues and special cards. It doesn't matter if they're all clues, that's brilliant. It does matter if they're all special cards. So do you just want to just check right now for me to make sure that you've got a mixture, and I shall do the same. I've got 1 special and 2 clues. Brilliant.
I think I've got 3 clues, although one's got a different icon on it.
That's absolutely fine. If you've got 3 specials, I've got to mulligan you.
Yeah, no,
three
three clues. 3 clues. I'm fine.
That's cracking. Brilliant. Okay. And so when you're the narrator and you come to introduce a clue, you introduce it from the suggestions that are in your hand. There's 2 more things that we're going to talk about right up front, and that is the leaping to conclusions mechanic. At the end of every scene, we will all go away. We won't actually go away because we're online, but we will go to a private place. You've all been given a private document in the journal function, and you will write down what you think the final horror is and how the clue relates to it. And at the end of every scene, we do that again, and just a sentence, doesn't have to be long, but then you update your theory as new clues come in. And of course, when you're the narrator, you want to introduce a clue that supports your theory instead of somebody else's. We don't share theories. We don't tell each other what our clues are. Someone has described this as a competitive GMless game to make sure that your theory is the last theory left standing, which I think is quite interesting. But I don't think that's entirely accurate. But we do not collaborate. We will all come up with our own theory. And then at the end, when we do the final reveal, one of us will narrate our theory, and Schrodinger's cat will be revealed to be dead or alive, and we will know which is the true solution. The other thing I want to talk about is at the end of every scene, the person playing the main character, in the beginning at least, has to explain why everything they've seen is perfectly normal and rationalize it all away, or they have to explain what has frightened them. And it gives you just a little bit more of a sense of building up that character for the next person to pick them up and play them. Oh, right. How am I doing on time? I'm good. I've got 4 minutes left before I timed myself. I timed how long it was going to take me to do this, to do my intro. So if you look at the very top of the board, you'll see some rules, and I've already mentioned some of these rules. The don't tell anybody what's in your hand rule, all at the top. As we progress through the game, these rules are going to very slightly change. And that's because the rules of a horror story change between the beginning of the story towards the end of the story. At the beginning of our story, our horror rules are that the horror must be subject to doubt. So in the beginning, you cannot have cast iron evidence of what the horror is, because we want that to be shrouded in mystery at the beginning of our game. We want there to be doubt. If somebody sees the horror, it was a dark night and maybe they were mistaken. That sort of thing is what we're looking for here. The main character, the main witness, is not going to believe in the supernatural or admit that it's real at the start of the game. They're looking for good reasons as to why that's not true. We're also going to have a no deliberate harm rule, because it's not traditional in horror stories for the main character to be killed in the first sentence or the first scene. We want to leave that and build a sense of dread and a sense of creeping horror. And part of the way that we do that is by saying that at the start of the game, nobody can describe physical or psychological harm on any other humans. So no deliberate harm is the other rule, and what that means is the main character can't die. You can't describe physical or psychological harm to another human being, and you can't threaten or attempt harm to the main character, trapping or attacking them, and that should be fine. But those are the rules that are in place at the beginning of the game. That won't be true by the end of the game. Those rules will change. The last rule that I wanted to talk about very quickly, and this is a rules change from first edition to second edition. It's a rule that we stole from Bleak Spirit, which is a hack of Lovecraftesque, because we played Bleak Spirit and went, bloody hell, that's a great idea. Why didn't we come up with that? Just because Chris is just much cleverer than we are. But the additional rule is the risk rule. If at any point anybody thinks that what the main character is attempting to do in the scene is actually quite risky, then we can invoke the risk rule. And what that means is the person who has triggered the risk rule will describe the risk to the main character. What is at stake in this situation? What might go wrong? The witness, the person playing the main character, will say what they hope will happen in the scene, the good outcome that they're hoping for, and then the witness and the whisperer each suggest how that might go wrong, how that might fall short of success, or how the main character has to pay a price, or a complication they may encounter, and the narrator chooses the one that they like the best and weaves that into the narration, which I think is quite a fun addition. So I've gone through most of my rules. Yep, brilliant. I think the one thing to mention, because it might come up, because I have got a special card and 2 clue cards, is that the special cards allow you to break the rules of the game. To break these rules which are written at the top of the board. If that comes up, I'll let you know when it happens. But up until then, I'm not saying anything because I'm not allowed to tell you what's in my hand. The other thing is that this game is built on scenarios. So we have a setting and a scenario that we're going to be playing through today. And I'm going to explore some of that now. And the scenario cards are to the right of the board and to the left of the board. And this is the main setting, 4 potential locations to give us some inspiration for how we might want to set our scenes, where we might want to set them. And I think 4 potential NPCs that we might want to use. Now, I was going to read out the setting. I was going to say, do you guys want to join me in reading bits out, or is it a little bit too fiddly for you to see? And should I just read the lot out? Which would you prefer?
I'm happy to join in.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it in turns.
Okay, well, let's start with the setting and the location. I will read the first card, and then I will pass over to Guy, who can read the one directly below it. So this scenario is called On Ilkla Moor Baht. Ben Ridding is a picturesque town in the West Riding of Yorkshire on the edge of Ilkla Moor. It was made famous in the Victorian period for its exceptional hydropathic spa establishment, but it is 1942, and rationing, wartime conditions, and the shadow of Hitler are grinding and relentless. The tourists are gone, the men are constricted, and the town is now an empty place. Guy, do you want to read the one directly below it?
So the first of our location cards is
That's right.
Ilkla Moor itself. A forbidding place, bleak and exposed. It stretches for miles, covered in low shrubs and garlanded in purple heather and hidden treachery. Sticky bogs suck down sheep, and blinding fog can descend instantly and last for days.
Oh, it's lovely to hear that in a Yorkshire accent as well. You'll have to try and
It's not changed since
Yeah.
1942, I can tell you.
you'll all have to brace yourselves now as I describe the Hydro Hotel in a Lancastrian accent, which American listeners might find identical, but for the rest of you might notice a difference. The Hydro Hotel was once the epitome of Victorian Gothic style. The Hydro is crumbling. It's closed shortly after the war, or shortly after the war began even, and was taken over by the Wool Control Board. Now almost deserted, it casts a long and grim shadow over the town.
I will take the next one. The 12 Apostles is a prehistoric stone circle on Ilkla Moor. There are 12 remaining stones which all lie prone on the heather. The circle adjoins a series of barrows, ancient burial sites which dot the surrounding countryside.
And I'll do Oakland's farm, the closest farm to the moor. It is lonely and isolated. Even the land girls refuse to spend the night there. Some of the animals have been suffering a strange and infectious skin condition. No one knows the cause of it.
This is such a lovely place. If
Yeah.
we move across to the other side of the board now, right at the top, Gaz, can you see the card titled Effie Williams?
I
She is
can.
our main character. This is the person that we're going to be playing and passing around between us.
Lovely. Well, Effie is a 12-year-old evacuee from London. Her little brother David was killed in the Blitz, and 3 months ago she was sent to Ben Ridding. She has an unmatched sense of adventure and slips past unnoticed, as children often do.
I will do the next one down. Corporal Claude Bell, an African-American soldier stationed nearby. He is a kind and gentle man, wholly unsuited to war, who would rather be home with his family. Since conducting army exercises on the Moor, he has become distant and withdrawn.
Excellent. I'll introduce Mrs. Phillida Bailey, Effie's host and carer while she's billeted in Ben Ridding. Phillida is a private person, often busy with the land girls, women volunteers providing farm labour during the war. She takes little interest in what Effie gets up to and is often bad-tempered. Lately, she's been spending a lot of time at Oakland's farm.
And to pair with the Hydro Hotel, we have Martha Jones, who is a maid at the former Hydro. She's still engaged by the Wool Control Board to do a little cleaning. She was vibrant, young, and bright-eyed, but since the Wool Control Board have taken over, she keeps quiet with a haunted look in her eyes.
And our last character that we might draw on is Mr. Frederick Hamilton, the former manager of the Hydro, turned down from the army for unknown reasons. His deteriorating health means he is a constant visitor to the doctor. He covers himself in layers and scarves on even the hottest of days, which, to be fair, there probably aren't that many of in Ilkla Moor. Right. So I think that what we're supposed to do is tell a weird story, and then the person who's got the weirdest story does the GMing. But that seems a little bit unfair. I feel like, as the person who has started this game or wrote this game, that I should be the one who does the first scene. So I'm going to frame the first scene. Who would like to be the first witness character?
I'll take it.
Effie. Oh, sorry.
there's a
Gaz will be
polite
the first
British
witness
pause,
character.
and then
Yeah. Gaz will be the first witness character.
Well, why don't we all take just 2 minutes to just check over our clues so we know what it is that we're going to do. Right. Okay, I think I'm beginning to get a sense of what I'm going to run and the clue that I'm going to bring in. So let's crack on. Effie. It's a surprisingly warm day on Ilkla Moor. You have left early to be alone and gone out exploring on the moors. Can you just tell me a little bit about what it is you like out here?
Yes, well, for Effie, she's delighted that it's the countryside. At first, she was disgruntled at having to move far away from everybody she knew, but having been in the horrors of the Blitz and things like that in the city and the choking smog and everything else, it's actually grown on her, and she's quite delighted by well, perhaps other people consider the moors to be a place of ill omen and stuff, but to her, it's a place of wonders, to things to explore. There's fresh air, there's flowers and animals and all kinds of things, and she's having pretty much a little time of her life with a bit of escapism she has when she can just go running out and nobody knows where she is.
That's fantastic. I think that you have got a large slice of bread and cheese in your bag, setting you up for the day. And what do you need to have a water bottle for? There's water running clear and free all over the moors, and I'm sure it's completely uncontaminated and delicious. I think that you have decided to head in the direction of the 12 Apostles. I don't think there's anything like that in London. There's all sorts of exciting and wonderful things in the city, but not only do they not have the nature and the moors and the wide open spaces in London, they have nothing like these kind of strange burial mounds and odd stones. So What is it about the stones that you think is drawing you to them?
I think that it is because when the light catches it in certain times of day, or you look from certain angles around the village, it looks like a group of people getting together for a little chat. And maybe sometimes there's a weird bit of light there or something, and maybe people around a campfire chatting. And they can look different depending on where you are or what time of day it is and that kind of thing. And she feels like it must be, I don't know. I guess in a small mind, it could be a coven of witches, it could be a secret gathering, it could be fairies, it could be anything. But it feels like there's a place to go where you can have people around you and share stories.
I love that. There is a strange smell here, though. It's not a smell that you have ever smelt before. And I'd love it, Guy, if you could explain or describe this smell to Effie.
Yeah, so what you might call agricultural smells with so many sheep about are nothing unusual on the moor, even as the wind carries them away. But there's a bite to this, like an acid or a cleaner that you've maybe smelt when Phillida's scrubbing down the steps at the front of the door. But it gets in the back of your throat, and you almost involuntarily, every time you smell it, you just let out a little cough, as if it immediately irritates your nostrils and mouth.
What do you want to do next, Effie?
Well, I'm not going to let something like that put me off, having trudged all the way through the mud and maybe nearly lost a shoe at one point. So I've got my cheese and bread. I'll crack out some of my crumbly, sharp Lancashire cheese that I've got and start taking a suck on that because that wipes out any other smell. But it does feel like there's perhaps something around, something else that she hasn't seen yet. So this feels like a good time to go exploring around the stones. Maybe there's something else here. Maybe there's, I don't know, a secret place that's beyond the stones. And she sort of like pats one of them and runs her hands through the mossy covering. Says, "What's that, Grandma? Is there someone here sneaking, a monster sneaking up at us? Let's go and find it. Don't worry, I'll look after you." And gives the stone a little pat. And then goes skirting around the outside of the stones to see if there's something else there hiding in the darkness.
I think the stones are indeed a comforting presence, but the smell is troubling, and you suddenly get the sense that when the wind moves, you get a sense of where that smell is coming from. And there's a barrow, a burial mound just over in the distance that you can see, perhaps a little darker than the rest. If there's monsters anywhere, it'll be over there.
There's an increase in her heartbeat, a little flutter in her chest. It feels slightly dangerous, but also quite naughty, and something that if someone else was here, they'd probably say, "Don't go in," which is all she needs to start heading over to have a closer inspection of this barrow.
The thing about the moors is that the weather can suddenly change, and what starts out as a beautiful sunny day can turn treacherous very quickly. Guy, can you tell me how the weather conditions are suddenly becoming more ominous?
Well, I think it was a sort of brisk sunlight when you arrived, but as you look around it, it is dark with grey clouds, and no sooner have you felt the sort of spatter of rain on your face than you're in the middle of a fast downpour, and your boots are slick on the mud as you approach this barrow, and visibility is down a little bit. Fog can creep in very quickly at this altitude, and it's difficult to even get your bearings to make it to the barrow.
But make it to the barrow you do. What's the first thing you do when you get here?
It's Ellie moves in under the eaves of the barrow to at least get out of the rain, and at first there's relief, and she kind of looks backwards and struggles to see the stones where they are now with the mist and fog and rain as it's coming. And that's when she gets a chill at her back. The water's starting to soak through her clothes a little bit, and it almost feels like there's wind curiously coming out of the barrow rather than into it or around it, which seems strange if it's a cave in the ground. When she kind of looks at it, the camera lens probably like makes it look deeper than it is as it kind of scans down it, and she shivers, not quite sure whether it's the cold or a little bit of fear that's come over her.
As she shivers, she suddenly notices that there is something unusual, something about this barrow. Now, maybe it's because she's not raised as a country girl and she doesn't know the ways of the moors, but there are mushrooms inside this barrow, a strange, sickly green colour that she's never seen before. But what is most unusual about these mushrooms is that they appear to be growing in spiral patterns. And I'm going to play my clue card. I hope I'm going to play my clue. Which is, oh, I've just moved it onto the thing and flipped it, which is weird terrain, strange. Each of the clue cards has got a lot of suggestions for how you might use it, and I've chosen strange patterns. There is a strange mushroom here, which is arranged in strange patterns inside the barrow, which is incredibly unnatural. I'm going to move this clue card and just put it at the bottom, and that's how we'll keep track of them all.
Gotcha.
I think that I'm just going to give you, Gaz, a moment to. How does Effie react when she first sees this, and then I'll end the scene and we'll do our leaping to conclusions.
Yeah, Ellie looks. I'm not whether she was to say I look or Ellie looks. I don't work out how yet that might change throughout the session. But yeah, she looks down at the strange mushroom. She's not quite sure what's going on. She kind of looks at the pattern and traces it out on the bit of cheesecloth he's got, and then thinks, "Oh, maybe I just don't know about these things, but they're probably good to eat." So she's going to collect up like handfuls of the mushrooms in a now empty cheesecloth and put that in a pocket. I think maybe when someone shouts at her later and says, "Where have you been?" you can I'll just say, "I've been collecting mushrooms and I got a bit lost," and that'll be fine. And maybe that little gift will mean I don't get as much trouble.
Oh, I love it. Right, I'm going to end the scene there. That's our first scene. Good job, everybody, especially me. I'm going to ask you guys to voice either the rationalizations of Effie or her fears, and then I'll talk you through leaping to conclusions.
Yeah, I think she's sort of frightened by everything because she is a fish out of water and it's all new. So the rationalization is really this. She's just trying to tell herself like it's probably fine, even though there's lots of things I don't understand. I've just got to keep going and it'll all be fine in the end. So for now, it's like there's weird odd things, but she's always seen weird odd things. There's nothing to worry about yet.
Absolutely nothing to worry about. Although, honestly, can't believe that she took some of them, and absolutely love it that she did. That won't come back to bite anybody, I'm sure. Right, excellent. Okay, so we've got our first clue, which is strange, sickly mushrooms growing in an unusual spiral pattern. And now we're each going to go into our leaping to conclusions documents, or if you'd rather use a piece of paper, please do use a piece of paper to write down. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes writing down what we think is really going on. What's the final horror? And how does the clue relate to it? Okay, right, done. Who I was going to pass the baton on to the narrator baton on to Gaz now, and if we just rotate it all the way around, so if the witness character goes to you, Guy, I'll take the whisperer, and then we'll do it in a nice little
Fantastic. Yeah.
circle.
Excellent. So I think I'm going to move us on to Auckland Farm. I'm going to say probably like properly nighttime now. Some might have gone down early, but it's not just that it's overcast, it is actually dark and you can see the farm. There are some sheeps about that don't look particularly healthy. They maybe staggering around a little bit. But there is some candlelight on, or maybe a small fire or something like that. So you can see there's a beacon, if you will, on the moors showing Ellie maybe some haven in this sea of mud and foul stenches and rain. As Ellie presumably approaches, you see shadows pass across the light that's emanating from the window. What does she do when she notices that perhaps what seemed like a safe haven might have someone or something in it?
So I'm thinking just in terms of the scene, I'm thinking this is like an old barn on the outskirts or something that I've made a little den. Does that sound about right? And nobody else knows about it, of course. So I've not told anyone, and certainly haven't let Mrs. Bailey or anyone know that it's happening. However, the shadows passing, that makes it all the more intriguing. I think that Effie, who was probably like whistling or humming a tune before, goes silent and creeps up to the window of this barn and maybe crawls up to try and peer in and get a better look at it, standing on her tiptoes, and maybe just has to lift herself up to the window ledge.
I'm going to add a chilling detail, if I may, which is that the window ledge has got an unpleasant, sticky lichen on it, which slimes underneath your fingers.
Peering through the grimy panes, you see, whether you perhaps know him or not, but Mr. Frederick Hamilton, you're aware he was a manager perhaps, or an important person in town. He looks down his luck. He's wearing a suit, but it's now falling apart at the seams and mucky. He's laid in scarves and blankets, and he has set up a little fire with a pot over it that he's brewing something in. He's coughing and blowing his hands. He sort of scratches his neck as the scarf moves. You see he's got some kind of acne or rash or something, not dissimilar perhaps to the thing that's been afflicting the sheep. But as you're on your tiptoes, he seems to hear something and looks round in your direction. What's your reaction to him staring through the glass?
I drop down from the window ledge, probably landing with a splash on the puddle at the base of it, sliding down, hands covered in lichen. And I think I flee, but I flee back to just the woods a few yards away and just turn around and peer just to see if he comes out again. I can't quite leave my curiosity at what he's going to do now.
And is there something in the woods that stops you going further in? Or are you caught between a rock and a hard place? Or is this just a little bit of cover for now?
I think the woods lead further into the farm bit, in my mind, if you see what I mean. So I've come from the entrance. This would mean going actually into the field with the sheep, if I went further. So I literally caught between, well, not literally, but caught between, figuratively, caught between a rock and a hard place, a barn and a field full of scary sheep, as I'm peering back, trying to work out if the farmer is coming this way.
Yeah, he steps out and you see him peering around and says shouts out, that grows will live again. And there's a plaintive wail from one of the sheep, almost as if in answer. I've got hot soup. I can share it. And he kind of half steps back, leaving a gap in the doorway, should you or someone else wish to enter into his farm.
I think that's the point where Effie runs out of the farm.
You mentioned a risk rule here. Shall we try and employ that?
Yeah,
let's do it.
I think this is a good point to introduce it.
I think this is a great point to introduce it.
So I need to say what I hope will happen.
Before that, we need to describe what the risk is to the main character. Now, bearing in mind, of course, we do have some rules around not, trapping, attacking, or killing the main character. That doesn't mean that things can't be risky. So I think then, since you called for the rule, Gaz, can you describe the risk to the main character? Then the witness will say what they hope will happen. Then we'll do the rest of it.
Yeah, it's obviously not the cleanest and nicest of places. There's plenty of old farm machinery, rusty nails, things like that. And I'm going to say that a sheep's passed away in the main gate that leads out, which is there's bits of it that should be inside that are on the outside now. There's just the risk that our main character like falls and ends up either like not harmed, but a scratch on a rusty nail, or gets a bit of dead sheep, a bit too close for comfort, or something like that. There's just infection or disease, I guess, is the headline, but there's a risk of catching something around here.
Yeah. Oh, yes, there is. So, what do you hope is going to happen to Effie, Guy?
I think what I hope is that she is going to not just run and escape the farm and the weird farmer's offer of soup, which is the one thing that's actually made her run away from something so far. But she'll maybe catch a glimpse as she runs past of something more about him. It will be fascinating. And crucially, I think that she makes it out with all of her stuff, including this big sack of mushrooms that I'm imagining she's still carrying around with her.
So now we, you and me, Guy, will each suggest how the main character encounters one of the following: falls short of success, pays a price, or encounters a complication, and then Gaz can choose which suggestion that he's going to use to fold into his narrative. I would like to suggest I suppose a complication, or maybe this is paying a price, but I think that in her haste, not only in her haste to leave, but because she wants to turn around and get a glimpse of something, Effie is going to trip and fall headfirst into this dead sheep, and she will make it away, but she is going to be covered in rotting sheep guts. And Philida Bailey is not going to be happy if she comes home covered in rotting sheep guts.
I think I sort of I set it up there, didn't I? I think she's going to make it away, but not even drop. She's going to forget to pick up the mushrooms that are going to spill there. And I'll leave it up to you guys, but maybe we see a sheep chewing on them later, or that there's some significance to this sack being left open in there.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm happy to have the mushrooms stay with her because I think that provides opportunity. So, regrettably for our main character, she slips and slides as she's looking backwards towards the farmer and just goes head first into the sheep carcass, which immediately deflates and expels more juices. But with that skittering and sliding display, she can rush through the farm gate and be away down the path. Perhaps not entirely sure where it is she's heading, but away from here, that's for sure. I think I'm happy with that for a scene, if that's good.
Yeah, have you introduced your clue?
I shall explain what it is now, yeah.
Then you should be able to drag, if you open up your card area, you should be able to drag and drop it onto the main play area.
There we go.
And then you can, you've already flipped it, and then you can drag it right down the bottom next to where I put mine. But yes. What was the clue?
I'm trying to equally show it on my screen. So I'll put it up here first just so I can show it to our viewers.
Oh, brilliant.
But our clue is an unusual sign or saying. So that which grows will live again was my unusual saying.
Lovely.
Which we may hear from other people, perhaps, as the story progresses.
So, Guy, can you just do Effie's fears and real or rationalizations? What is she afraid of, or what is she trying to rationalize away after that scene?
I think that she was already pretty sure that Mr. Hamilton was just a weird old man. And that nothing has changed that view. He's a weird old man. He can't even look after his sheep. He's lonely. He doesn't know what's going on. He got some soup, and he said some old Yorkshire phrase there that probably they say all kinds of strange things up here. I don't know what I'm meant to make of that. So yeah, it's just a weird old man with his weird sheep and his funny farm. But I don't want to go near that again. I'll go back on the moors before I go back to Oakland's farm.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we're going to do our leap to conclusions and update our theories. Hopefully, Gaz, you won't need to update your theory because your theory will still be tip-top A1.
Might just add some nuance to it.
Gaz, you're the whisperer. Guy, you're the narrator, and I'm playing the main character. Do you want to hard frame me a scene, Guy?
Excellent. Yeah. So I think this is back. I'm allowed to use locations that aren't explicitly on the location board.
Absolutely,
okay?
absolutely. The locations that are there are to give you ideas, not to constrain you.
So I think this is the following morning, I think. And it is breakfast at the modest lodgings, Effie, where you are living with Mrs. Bailey, who I think you would call Mrs. Bailey at this point, and you are, I think it's rationing, so it's quite a meager breakfast that you have, but I think Mrs. Bailey is the kind of person in her little 2 up, 2 down. It's still on plates and with knives and forks and with a spread out of the little tiny pot of jam that there is that you can't take much of. These breakfasts are normally a quite quiet, strict affair where conversation is guided by Mrs. Bailey and is very businesslike and often trying to make Effie become the lady that she should be. How, Effie, can you tell that Mrs. Bailey is like not herself this morning?
So I think that Mrs. Bailey has a very specific way that she has her toast in the morning. She scrapes it with a pretension of butter. And the reason I say a pretension of butter is, of course, it's rationing, but she still feels that butter on toast in the morning is what you do. And so she takes, like 1/4 of a teaspoon of butter and scrapes it over to her bread. And the next thing she do is that she cuts her single slice of bread into 8 small pieces, 4 of which she puts a small piece of jam on, and then she eats the plain ones first, and then the jam one second, like a pudding. And the pieces of toast have to be all precisely the same size, an equal 1/8 each. This morning, however, she has distractedly cut her toast into only 4 pieces and doesn't even seem to have noticed after she's taken a bite of something which is clearly much bigger than it ought to have been.
Yeah, there is a slight tremor to her hand, and foregoing small talk. Effie, where were you last night?
Last night, Mum, Mrs. Bailey.
In the evening.
Effie is desperately trying to think of something that would have been wholesome for her to have been doing out late at that time, since she probably can't pretend otherwise. And she says, I was coming back from the moors when I found a sheep in trouble. And I thought to myself, sheep are very expensive, aren't they? So I better help it out of this bog that it was in. And it took me quite a long time. I'm afraid I did get some mess on me, but I'm sure that I did save that sheep. And that was a good thing that I did, wasn't it?
Yeah. And anyway, so one of the girls said she'd seen you at the Oaklands farm with Mr. Hamilton's. With Mr. Hamilton. Now, listen to me, Miss Effie Williams. And she reaches out and actually grabs your hand from the toast and says, you stay away. You stay away from that farm and you stay away from that man. Promise me, miss, you will stay away from that farm.
Yes, I promise you. Of course. If you don't want me to go there, and if there was a camera, the camera would pan out so you could see her crossing her fingers underneath the tablecloth as she says, I'll never go there again, Mrs. Bailey, I promise.
you mustn't go there. It's not right. And she's shaking. You can hear her visibly shaking in her hand. And then she sort of pulls away, and with a sort of clatter of crockery leaves the table. And we maybe see that at the back of her back as she just is sobbing in the other room quietly to herself. I don't, Gaz, do you want to add anything else weird to this emotional outburst?
I think we get but it's an external shot, but a drone shot comes and pulls away and shows the church with a little graveyard they've got next to it, and we see a husband's grave with a well-tended stone and plot, and there's just the hint of little mushrooms growing up in a little spiral pattern.
Love it.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, and that was the scene there, I think.
Excellent.
I will attempt to play my card in this. So how do I flip it?
If you right click, I think it gives you the option.
Yeah, you drag and drop it onto the main area, and then you can right
Oh,
click
yeah,
it and
that's it,
have the
yeah.
option to flip. That's it.
So yeah, I went for the fear and loathing option of someone exhibits unexplained but strong fear
Nice.
of something. Obviously, Mrs. Bailey for the farm and Mr. Hamilton.
Love it. I'm going to do my fears and rationalizations as Effie.
Yeah.
Now, my rationalization of Mrs. Bailey's unusual behaviour is, well, this is wartime. We're all British. What's almost certainly happening is something scary about the war has upset her, but we don't talk about those things because we're just all repressed and stiff upper lipped. So she's got to go and have a cry in the sink like Mummy used to do. But that's just normal in a world of repressing your emotions, isn't it?
Good healthy behaviours. Yeah.
It is Yorkshire after all.
Built a nation on these behaviours, and it's all turned out completely fine.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, let's go and update our leaping to conclusions. I'm going to move the action on again. And so I'm back narrating. Gaz, you're Effie. Guy, you're whispering. I'm going to move the action on again and say that you, Effie, are maybe you're sitting on the wall outside Mrs. Bailey's house, swinging your legs, when you see Martha Jones from the Hydro Hotel, the girl who does the cleaning there. She looks like she's coming from the Hydro Hotel, having just finished her shift. Her eyes are. She has very dark rings around her eyes these days, and she is walking down the street, looking quite furtive. She hasn't noticed Effie, despite the fact Effie's sitting there on the wall swinging her legs, because children often go unnoticed. But she looks like she's up to no good.
Well, Effie will look even more inconspicuous, by which I mean she stops swinging her legs, which will obviously hide her from Blitz. Until the maid or the erstwhile maids walk past, and then she thinks this is very exciting, so hops down off the wall and then starts hopping from cobblestone to cobblestone and following her up the road to see what she's doing.
She seems to be clutching a bag, and clutching it surprisingly tightly. It's quite a big bag, something important in there, and it seems to be quite heavy. Guy, can you tell us that apart from her dark ringed eyes and her strangely large, heavy bag, what else is unusual about or striking about Martha Jones?
I think she moves with sort of lolloping limp, the way where people limp, but they actually walk the same speed or faster. It's not slowing her down, but there's a sort of imbalance to the way that she moves, as if there's an injury, it hasn't quite healed right, and she lists to one side a little bit as she does it, and have to keep stopping and scratching something on the back of her neck beneath her, probably beneath her bonnet, I'd imagine. Are they wearing the sort of head scarf things? Does that fit in what you had for her?
Yeah, so I think like it's 1940s, so wearing like a headscarf.
Yeah.
That's
There we
quite
go.
a
For Ilkla weather.
de rigueur. Yeah,
Yeah.
for Ilkla weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking back to my grandma's, wearing a headscarf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very last of the summer wine.
Okay. Well,
And yeah,
if
tell me, Effie.
if nothing changes after following for a little bit, Effie will get bored and reflect on perhaps she needs to do more good deeds given the potential for trouble and how upset her surrogate mum is. So she'll just pop up. People like unexpected help from strange quarters, so she'll just leap out at one point almost, just pop up and say, "Hi, can I help? That looks heavy."
Martha Jones clutches the bag to her chest and steps back. She didn't know that Effie was there. You came upon her completely unannounced, and she is alarmed at the sight of you. But she takes a step back and says, "You the evacuee, Miss Bailey's?"
Yes, that sounds like me. What's wrong with your leg?
I was cleaning up at the hydro, and I slipped in on the steps. I was just washed. I wasn't very careful.
Very easy to slip. I've done that myself. It's very slippy around here. What have you got? Do you want me to help? Looks like you're struggling. If you've hurt your leg, I can carry your bag for you. I'm good at helping.
Are you good at helping?
Oh, yeah.
Her demeanour is slightly changing now. Instead of clutching the bag to her chest, she is looking slightly predatory, almost. And she relaxes a little bit, although she's still holding it close. You do look like a helpful sort of a person.
Well, when I left, my mum said I had to be helpful to everyone. I hadn't to be a nuisance. I've got to make something of myself and help and not get in the way. So that's what I'm doing. I'm helping.
Well, I have a special job, but it's a secret job. Do you think you could help me with my secret job, but you'd have to promise not to tell anybody?
She kind of looks about. Well, probably it's not. It's not a bad job, is it?
Got to water some plants.
Okay. Well, that sounds fine. I'm not sure why it's secret though, but sure. Have you got a secret stash of food? Are you growing your own vegetables? Maybe there's extras. Maybe I could have some.
I'm growing mushrooms, and maybe you could have some. You look like the sort who would enjoy them.
Well, they're not for me. They're for Mrs. Bailey, really. But I'm sure I'll have some if she cooks them.
Well, she sort of steps back a bit at the mention of Mrs. Bailey, and then says, well, we need to grow them first. So why don't you carry my bag, and I'll take you round to the places and we'll water the mushrooms.
That sounds fine. Yeah, of course. Let's do that. Yes, that's the best.
That's why I don't want you to tell anyone.
She's always looking in the cupboard and shaking her head and crying a little bit when she thinks I'm not looking. But for us to come back with loads of goodies, then that'd cheer her right up.
Well, I mean, it's rationing, isn't it? But we don't want to spoil the surprise because, maybe we'll have a bad harvest. So let's just wait and see how well it turns out first, yes? And you promise you won't say.
Oh, of course, it'll just be our secret.
So first she takes you into the graveyard. and points out where all the mushrooms are and gives you the bag to hold. And she takes out a pot or like a jar out of the bag with a screw top lid. Guy, there is something when she unscrews the lid, there is something unusual about the water in this jar.
Yeah, I think as she unscrews it, it almost, she's holding it steady, but it splashes of its own accord, as if there's a current in it, as if it's trying to get out. It's almost, maybe she almost just opens the first bit of the jar, and it's like the rest of the lid just screws itself off with the water. And she has to hold tight to keep the water in.
He takes you around. There's various graves that have the mushrooms growing on. And if there's, it's early in the morning, so she takes you all the way up to the barrows where the mushrooms are also growing.
I think it's as we're going up to the barrows that Effie's starting to feel a bit uncomfortable about all this. She wasn't entirely sure. Going to the graveyard seemed dodgy, but now she's like, now come with me out on the moors. Effie's a bit unsure about this. So as you kind of like leaving the eaves of the village, almost towards wilderness, she pulls back a little bit and says, I am quite tired though. That was quite a lot of work already. I don't think I can go into the moors anymore."
Martha Jones kind of collects herself and says, "Oh, you're right, of course. Let me carry on, and well, maybe I'll see you later, maybe tomorrow." And she walks off in the directions of the barrows and waves. I'm going to end the scene there. And the clue is that somebody in the village is watering the mushrooms with something. Maybe something from the hydro. You give me your Effie's fears and rationalizations, Gaz, and then we will leap to conclusions and then maybe take a very short comfort break because since we're going for a while.
I think she was all right helping, but then things don't seem right. These mushrooms do look a little bit sickly, and the water didn't look good. And she has probably heard things about industry and having bad chemicals and things like that. So she's a little bit worried that there's some kind of artificial fertilizer, or whether she could frame it in that way, being a young girl or not, perhaps not. But she's aware of stories of factories ending up doing unhealthy things, and she's a bit concerned that in the rush to get more food, perhaps the village have embraced something they shouldn't have done in terms of that.
Love it. Right, we'll leap to conclusions and then we will take a break.
Lovely. Well, we can continue to type and do things as we wish as we head into the break. So, for all of you at home, we're going to take a quick comfort break now. It'll only seem like a few seconds here. We'll edit it down so you can jump straight back in. But for now, we'll have to get some rippling water and delicious mushrooms to fortify ourselves for the second half, which you'll see very soon. And welcome back to Lovecraftesque. In the first part, our young lady Effie had been transported to the wilds of Yorkshire to stay away from the Blitz and started to find some uncomfortable things, strange sayings, strange sounds and smells, and mushroom farming, perhaps, in her little part of the world. So now we shall play to find out what happens to her next, and will she even survive whatever it is that's haunting Ilkla Baht.
Gaz, you're narrating the next scene with Guy playing Effie and me whispering. So have a think about your clue cards and then throw us into the action.
Got it. Okay. I think we should move to the somewhat abandoned hotel that sits on a little bit of a rise with a commanding view of the village and the road that leads out of it. And perhaps from the upper floors, you can even see the stone circle and things like that on the moors on a clear day, of which there are precious few, but occasionally you get a good view out. I presume because Effie's decided that with the maid away. There's no one else there, and she can just go and have a play around. So Effie's found herself just running around at first, opening doors and looking in and having a nice time. And then, as tends to happen in older buildings and things like that, there's creaks and knocks and sounds. And she can put it off at first that it's the pipes, or it's just maybe it's a mouse or something. And then it starts to get to the point where you hear footsteps behind, but spinning round, there's no one there. There's just a disembodied voice saying, Effie.
I will freeze. Who's there?
So hungry, aren't you? You're hungry.
Mr. Hamilton?
And there's a soft chuckle, and the hairs on the back of your neck start to go up, and you start to freeze, almost literally. You can see a hoarfrost covers the door handles and stuff next to you, the rooms nearby, and hear footsteps, but again can't see anything. But they're soft, also soft on the nice plush carpet.
I run down the corridor. Try to get out of there.
Indeed, you do. Becky, as Effie turns the corner and what she thinks will be her way out, what is it that's unexpectedly in the way and perhaps a little shocking?
That's a great question. Okay. There is a dead sheep barring your way. Oh, that's barring. I didn't mean to pun, but I did. Sorry.
Very good, though.
No need to be sheepish. Yeah.
There is a dead sheep on the floor. It's possible for Effie gets past the sheep. It's not filling the whole corridor, but the smell of it is filling the corridor.
I spin round because I think there's a memory of falling into that dead sheep before that she is not keen to do. So I'm picturing this as a fairly sort of, for Effie, certainly a fairly labyrinthine hotel. So she will try another corridor and rush down it and try and find, maybe there's an open window she can clamber out of. I mean, maybe that's a risk.
I think if you can feel a draft from up the stairs, so there must be an open window. And as she paddles up as fast as she can, now probably oblivious to whether there's footsteps behind her or not, as she gets to the landing at the top, where there is indeed the fresh air coming through with a diaphanous curtains floating of almost the life of their own, there's another sheep, but this one is very much alive and staring at her. And perhaps surprising, when it opens its mouth to bleat, she hears the same voice saying, Effie, are you hungry?
I run and leap towards the window to clamber out.
Yeah, I think that's risky. I'll put to the table, see if we agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a risk there. There's a risk there for sure.
Yeah. So what is the risk? You're the narrator.
Indeed, yeah. I think the risk is... we're still like no physical harm, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're still no physical harm.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the risk is that I think Effie will get out one way or the other. It's whether she makes enough noise that it's going to alert someone else. Like it's going to be really obvious. Maybe smashes the glass, breaks some slates, bounces off a couple of things. There will be people around. It'll be obvious that she's done something foolish and obviously loud in the hotel.
I think what Effie hopes will happen is just that she manages to get out and away from this strange sheep that she thinks is whispering to her, or sounds like she's whispering, because there's something else here. It can't be the sheep. So she needs someone else here. So she needs to just get out cleanly.
The complication is that Effie has a bow in her hair, which she absolutely loves, and it's one of the last things that she was able to take with her from London that her mother gave her. And in her haste to get out of the window, one of the options that you might choose, Gaz, is that she leaves her ribbon behind.
I think the complication I'd suggest that you might choose is that she's leaving on the other side of. She doesn't know where she's leaving the hotel from, and it is on the moor, isn't it? Actually, this hotel. So she's come out some side, and in her haste to get away, she's going to lose her bearings completely and be lost on the moor.
Yes, I think I'm inclined to go with the latter. So she can get out, but she's just blindly trying to get away, and it's only when breath escapes her body and she has to stop that she suddenly realizes she doesn't know where she is anymore.
Beautiful. So to rationalize that, I think she'd already smelt that chemical smell, and it's they use all kinds of things to clean wool these days, and some of those chemicals can be that smell was quite acrid, and maybe it just made her lose her concentration a bit. She's heard about, she's sometimes heard the soldiers have told her, Captain Bell has told her, Corporal Bell has told her that sometimes happens, that you can do it if you're not well ventilated enough, and she can't hear the voices now she's out in the fresh air. So it was maybe that, just the chemicals and the dead sheep that.
I love it.
Right.
Tell us what the clue was, and we will leap to conclusions.
Certainly. Let me try and land this on the page in the right place so everybody can see it at home. So yeah, strange sensations, which I think was a mixture of the whispering and the cold that was coming in. So there's something else about here beyond the machinations of the villagers and the mushrooms. There's something else which you can only determine by the sensations that you feel or hear or smell.
Yeah, the nice rules have gone.
Yes, it worked. It worked. So we have moved on to a different phase now. We've moved into Act 2, which means we have different rules in play. What the risk rule, the clue rules, the don't talk to each other rules, the roles, they're all the same. Leap to conclusions is the same, but we have lost our creeping horror and we've lost our don't hurt anybody rule. So the new rules for the next scene are: number 1, survival and sanity. Nobody may describe deliberate physical or psychological harm to the main character, but any other human, they're up for grabs. The main character still can't die. Any other human, fair game. Inexplicable or supernatural things may be directly observed, but only if they are one of unclear, ambiguous, subject to doubt. So still need to have a little bit of room for doubt in there, but you can be a little bit more blatant. And we're only going to do one scene in this section before I move us on. So don't worry too much about the end game scene, because I have a plan for that, because I've got a special card that's going to cover that off that I got dealt. So we don't need to worry. So in order to keep this things quite pacey, so make sure that we end within the time frame. I'm only going to choose to do one scene in this section instead of, you can do up to 3. We're only going to do 1. And that's going to be yours, Guy, with the new rules in play. So have a little bit of think about that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for, we'll mix it up, and I think this is very soon after. Given that we've established that Effie's lost on the moors, seems like we should begin with Effie lost on the moors. And I think you've tried to make your way sort of downhill, but it moors, for people who haven't seen them, our American viewers maybe, they sort of undulate and go up and down. It's not always clear which side of the valley you might go on. Ilkla Moor is vast, isn't it? It covers a huge part of West Yorkshire, actually, and loads of, there's not just Ilkla at the base of it. Ilkla's at one end, there's loads of other towns and villages around it. So fairly soon after this, you're trying to get your bearings, and you start going downhill. You start going uphill to maybe be able to see something, but guess what? The weather is foggy and rainy again, and it's hard to see what you've done until you see a silhouette on a ridge not far from you, just above you. It's a man with his back to you, with what looks like a sort of sack on his shoulders. Effie, how do you approach this man, or do you not?
So Effie considers herself to be a streetwise Londoner. So she is going to approach this man, but cautiously. She's not just going to kind of walk up to him smartly and say, "Hey, you, I've got some questions for you. Where's my house? I'm lost." She is going to creep up to him and get closer and make sure she can get a good look at him to see if she thinks he looks safe for certain values of safe.
So this man has is topless from the waist up, and his bare back is sort of scarred and weltered. The sack, as you approach closer, you notice is actually a dead sheep, pus riddled, and he, as you sort of creep up, you see him heft it off his back and over onto the other side of the ridge, and then turn back and go along and pick up another by the legs, heft it over his shoulder, and go there. There's a glance over. Effie, how do you know that he has seen you but is not stopping what he's doing?
So I'm hiding behind a little hummock on the moors, but I know it's not really a very big hummock, and I'm bigger than that. And he has looked over directly pretty much at me. And I know that I'm just pretending to hide, and he knows that I'm just pretending to hide at this point. But the fiction still hangs heavy in the air.
And he hefts another sheep over the ridge. I think you can hear the sort of, there's clearly a cliff or something below it, and you hear a sort of it bounce, sort of a bit of a squelchy sound as it hits the base. He glances back, rolls his eyes, and then goes along, begins to go sort of beyond the ridge and down.
Does he pick up any more sheep? Basically, I think Effie is hoping he'll pick up another sheep, because if he's carrying a sheep and she shouts out a question to him, it's going to be harder for him to chase her with a sheep on his back, and she might get a momentary head start.
Yeah, so you can just about make him pick up a sheep, but he ducks down out of view on the other side. To get his attention, you might need to go up to this ridge.
I will do that. I'll go up to the ridge, and then I will try and put on my best "I'm not an urchin" voice. "Excuse me, sir. Do you know the way back to Ben Ridding's?"
Aye, that'll do. And he steps up to you, and as you glance, and maybe there's a sun breaks through the clouds, you can see the far side of this cliff that he's been throwing the sheep on is littered with bodies of dead sheep. Well, littered at first, you see, but when you look again, they're being placed. He's gone round to place another one in there. It's a spiral pattern that he's placing these in.
Love it.
Could use a hand here.
Um, what do you need a hand with?
Just hefting sheep.
I'm only small. I could send someone from the village.
Aye. Then someone from village, and he drops the sheep, and he approaches you, making to point. He says, "The village down that way, or that creek." Gaz, can you just add a little bit more menace to this man, even as he's directing Effie back to the village?
Well, if I might, it's not the man himself, but it's his sheepdog. And Effie's not really been paying attention to anything else apart from this horrific man. So then she feels like the hot breath panting on the back of her legs and the low, menacing growl of a hound, just waiting for the word of command from its master.
How does Effie respond to the previously unseen dog?
I think that she is going to. Another thing in horror movies, when you're so fixated and horrified by the thing in front of you that you try to start running backwards and then fall down, like sit down heavily, and then you're kind of scrabbling backwards. I think that's what she's going to be doing.
Yeah, and I think the dog half-heartedly gives chase before it's called back. Leave her. Get help from the village. Do that. And it sort of comes back, and we see it nuzzle on some piece of meat that he's taken for his dog. Yeah. And I think that might be my scene. I think.
Oh.
So
you pain. I don't know what I'm going to do with that in my leap to conclusion.
The phrase "competitive game" was placed.
Laid before as like a dead
Best
sheep.
of luck, everyone.
I've not been playing hard enough.
Do I put my clue out now and then you rationalise it? Is that the right way around? So So I think this is a clue that is specific to the scenario, isn't it? I think that's. So this was the unnatural bodies, flocks of dead sheep, limbs withered and covered in boils. Was the actual clue. The man was just an additional flavour.
He was a very sinister flavour.
A seasoning to the
my rationalisation is it's quite simple actually. This is all horrible and disgusting, but there's clearly some sheep plague thing going on here. I guess the reason Mrs. Bailey doesn't want me up at the farm is because maybe it's contagious and she's worried about it. So I'm definitely not going to help him heft those like pussy sheep anywhere. And I think that the fact that they're placed in that really specific spiral pattern, she's just going to blank that from her mind. She's going to be like, that wasn't real. I must have I've been seeing too many spiral patterns. It was just a load of dead sheep. There's some horrible infection here. I'm not going to eat lamb for a while. I'm going to eat mutton. Not that I'd be eating mutton anyway, because there's a war on and it's rationed.
But if all those dead sheep, it's a tragedy in many ways.
That's
but if there's a sudden glut of mutton in this village and everybody's eating a lot of it, then maybe I won't. Right, let's leap to conclusions. And then I'm going to speed us through and move us on to the next bit. I'm doing a bit of a truncated version of the game to fit it in time. Okay, so normally we would have between 1 to 2 more scenes, and at the end of those scenes we would be putting the witness in a place where she's going to start sort of the journey into darkness, which is what we kind of call the journey towards the final horror. And this actually comes from an element of Lovecraft's fiction, in that if you read his stories, there's almost always a point where the main character goes on some sort of final journey before they meet the horror. Maybe it's a spiritual journey, maybe they actually walk down a long dark tunnel, but there's always something which mimics the journey into darkness. And so that's the section that we're going to be moving to now. Now, I have a card which I'm going to play to force that. Just going to flip now. Can everyone see that on the board?
Shifting sounds.
So I can play and I'm going to play this as a means of forcing Effie to start the journey into darkness. Now I'm going to say that she follows the instructions to go back into the village, and at some point along her journey, she falls down into a sinkhole, which leads into a tunnel. I don't know what's at the end of the tunnel. We're going to play to find that out, but that's how we've ended up here. I'm just going to move that down a little bit because we're going to need this bit of the board, and then more scariness. I'm going to move the token to the start of Journey into Darkness, and I'm going to try and change the rules cards again. Pray for me, everybody. So we don't have normal roles for the next few scenes, and I say scenes, but that's a little bit that's calling it something a bit more than it is. So now we are on the Journey into Darkness, and what we're going to do in the Journey into Darkness is that for between 13 and 16 scenes, we're going to rotate, and just checking my notes. So this is effectively 13 to 16 steps in one extended scene, and the extended scene is Effie traveling through this underground tunnel, having fallen through the sinkhole into the moor, and we're going to take it in turns to say sort of 1 or 2 sentences, and those 1 or 2 sentences will be either we're going to describe something about the environment moving closer to this darkness, whatever it is, or we're going to be yet again voicing fears and rationalizations. The previous rules are still in play around we're not going to kill her. We're not going to do any terrible harm to her, but we can do that to other people. We're not going to be leaping to conclusions because we're not introducing any new clues. And then when we get to the end of the Journey into Darkness, we will move into the final horror phase, where one of us will reveal what's been going on all along. That's okay, because we've all been leaping to conclusions, and Guy didn't absolutely throw something in which completely messed mine up at the last minute.
Play hard.
Play hard or go home. Get it. So I think that I was the last witness character, which means that I'm the first person to say something on the Journey into Darkness. And so I am going to describe what it feels like falling down this sinkhole. The moors are very treacherous places, and Effie just isn't used to it. She hasn't grown up here. She doesn't understand. She's looking for the odd rabbit hole. She knows about the mist, but suddenly a sinkhole opens up in front of her. The ground just gives way beneath her feet, and she falls to the bottom of the sinkhole. She can see what looks like a tunnel in front of her. Although it's quite dark, there's enough sunlight just to see the entrance to the tunnel. And she's not hurt, but she has fallen in so deeply she can't get out. And now I'm going to pass over to Gaz.
Yeah, and then she starts coughing. There's that cloying, acrid at the back of her throat, and she realized that as she stumbled about and stepped beneath the sinkhole, there was a spiral of big, fat, slimy mushrooms that she's crunched up, and she recognizes then that it's breaking them apart that's released loads of spores, and it's them in the air that give off this horrible smell that is starting to stick, and she wonders whether like there's literally stuff stuck in her throat now rather than just feeling like it.
Die.
So she pads forward through the tunnel to try and get out of them. It's not all mushrooms. It's the sticky lichen on the walls as she slips and slides. It's hard to tell if this is going down or up as she just looks and searches for a way out.
She's moved so deep into the tunnel now that the sunlight isn't penetrating here. but there's a soft phosphorescent glow from some mushrooms on the sides of the walls, which gives her just enough to keep her footing, but it is a sickly and unhealthy glow.
And in that one light, as she rounds the corner, there's an eye staring at her with that weird split pupil that sheep have. And it seems like it's broken a leg or got stuck down here somehow, but it's still trying to eat at the mushrooms, like with a plaintive bleat. It's reaching up, stretching its neck, and she can see the holes in its jowls as she eats a bit of fungus that falls through its mouth and back out again onto the floor to join the rest of the unholy carpet on which she treads.
Perhaps distracted by the sheep she's just seen, she steps forward into another patch of mushrooms and feels the spores released. But this time, as she breathes in, expecting to cough, it's clear and she can almost breathe more easily within the cloud of spores than she could before she stepped on them. And takes a deep breath in as she steps forwards.
The mushrooms to her eyes now seem to slightly pulsate, and the pulsating matches the rhythm of the phrase, "That which grows will live again," in her mind.
And she feels taller. At first, it feels like the tunnel's getting smaller, but as she looks down at herself, she sees that her clothes are getting tighter about her. She seems to be advancing in years, almost in minutes. She's full of vibrancy and life and seems to grow with every step.
She stops and takes a moment to still herself and thinks this is just like at the hotel. There must be some chemicals or something here that I've breathed in. I just need to focus and keep going forward, and can see, I think, maybe a light. There is light further up that's brighter, that maybe is sunlight. So she presses forward again, breathing deeply and feeling physically quite well now.
But there is a gnawing fear growing in the pit of her stomach. Why does she feel so well? She's stuck underground. It's unpleasant. It should be scared. She should be scared. She shouldn't be feeling like this. What's wrong?
That's when she hears the voice again. Say, Effie, we have our place ready for you. You won't be hungry anymore. Come and take your place. A little chill shivers down her.
As she steps forward, she there's a little sort of footrest on the side of this, and it's clear that somebody has been here before her and taken rest. And as she looks down at the water bottle that's by the side and the bowl and spoon, she recognizes these as the bowl that the farmer was holding as he invited her in for soup. You could swear it's the same bowl, same spoon.
The memory of the soup reminds Effie that she hasn't eaten since breakfast. It's really late now. She skipped right over lunch, and that it seems the most ridiculous thing for her to be thinking about while she's in here and she doesn't know where she is, and she's doesn't know if she's going to see Ben Ridding again, but all she can think about is how she is.
As she
She's sorry, go.
Oh, I was
No, no. I was going to say, yeah, you do it.
As she progresses forward, there is indeed a spear of light in a widened cavern. There's a crack in the ceiling above, a ravine perhaps in the moors, and she takes in the expanse before her and led in a spiral pattern of the bodies, perhaps sleeping, perhaps otherwise, of half the village in a spiral pattern. There's just one centerpiece missing, room for perhaps a girl of 12 or 13 summers.
Right, I'm going to move us straight to the final horror because it feels very much like we're already there. I am going to move the board on. But because we're in the final horror now, the rule about harm, I believe, should have come off the board. Yes. So the rule about harm has now come off the board. We are in the final horror, which means that one of us is going to narrate what is the solution to the mystery and what is the final horror. We've all got a solution. Some of them are quite weak. That's mine. It's quite weak. Who would like to be the narrator for the final scene?
Was you rock, paper, scissors guy? You got something strong? Do you want me to say? What do you want to do?
I'm curious. I'd like you to do it actually because
Okay.
I want to find out what yours is.
Yeah, I'm now worried about the strength of mine and how it all fits together. But
Yeah.
so the demon, the entity, whatever it is that was trapped here, nailed in place by the standing stones so many generations ago, that stopped those times in Britons in time past of having to give up their daughter in sacrifice every harvest. It's been pinned here for countless years, but it's started to leak out. It's found ways, cracks in the earth, the movement of plates. It's managed to push its essence out in little mushrooms, in little drops, to find its way through the life chains, to get other people, to get sheep to consume it, animals, to get people to eat the animals, to start to infect the minds. It just needs a sacrifice and it can release itself from the prisons of the stones. But it has to be a willing sacrifice. Ellie has to want to lie down in the center of the spiral with the others. If she can do that and give up her life, then it will be free. It can promise everything, but it has to have its sacrifice.
But does that mean I'm the witness? Sorry, just to how this scene works.
Yeah.
Because I think Effie is. She hasn't. We get a close up of her face, and she's chewing on something. She hasn't even absent-mindedly realized it, but she was so hungry, and there were mushrooms just there to eat it. As she takes another handful and steps forward, absent-mindedly, towards the center.
So the next thing that happens is the witness gets to say the epilogue. Sounds to me like she has chosen to become the willing sacrifice and release the demon. So the witness, i.e., that's you guy, gets to say a few sentences about what this means for the world and what this means afterwards.
So I think this demon being released, the immediate action is that we see Ben Ridding and the farm begin to flourish. The hydro is chosen as a hotel to convalesce injured soldiers. The sharp moorlands air will heal them. And there was already a garrison in Ilkla, so it would prosper. And soon, with the end of the war, tourism comes back to Ilkla and it flourishes all the time, providing sacrifices to the demon of Ilkla Moor.
I love it.
The lamb and mushroom stew on the menu is a speciality of the.
If only Effie hadn't gone out for that walk without her hat on Ilkla Moor, she would have been fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I did have a detail which I omitted, was that the demon can give you what I want, and due to the rationing, was what people wanted was food, and that was why it had chosen that form to be able to get out and into the world. So that your epilogue of that fits right in with that guy. Well done.
Yeah.
I love that. according to mine, we've still got a few minutes left. And so if now is a good time, if people do want to share the alternate theories, or the had we collapsed the waveform in a different way, what would the ending have been?
I think my leap into conclusions was remarkably similar, actually. So I had, the Moors are corrupted. I had a beast living there, that there was an ancient curse that Mr. Hamilton worshipped and sought to appease it. Mrs. Bailey's husband was killed by the thing, and the mushrooms protect you from the curse. The hotel was like a conduit for the beast, and sacrificing sheep to bring the beast back was my final thing from there. But yeah, remarkably similar, actually.
Mine is a bit similar, but I had gone in a more folk horror-y direction, in that some, but not all of the villagers were taking the mushroom as a sacrament so that they could commune with their dark god who lived in the hydro.
Yeah, I think that fits in with was trying to communicate with people by mushrooms.
True. It's true.
That's
Okay,
it.
well, that's it. That's Lovecraftesque 2E. I didn't blow up the Roll20 board like I did at lunchtime, so I can relax now. And thank you ever so much. I really enjoyed that. This is one of my favourite scenarios, and every time it's always completely different, the story that we tell. So
it's a fantastic game, and I think Becky managed to showcase what it's so good about it. I should say I've been following along with my physical game of it. I'm always happy when I buy a game and the box is much bigger than I expected. So just full of scenarios and stuff, and it is a proper sort of artifact. So definitely pick it up wherever games are sold.
Yeah, and thanks Becky for hosting. Thanks Guy for co-hosting. We all GM tonight, really, which was a nice change. Do let us know at home if you want to see more GMless games or this kind of content. As always, support small content creators and publishers. So head over to the Black Armada site and see what other wonderful games there are on offer. Do pick up Lovecraftesque. And if we've earned your like and subscribe and share, please do that on YouTube, social media, as that helps the channel out. And we like to hear from you. So do comment below any thoughts, questions, queries, or what you might have done, what you thought the mystery was behind all these strange goings on in Ilkla.